Is the mind a totally separate entity from the body? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher's Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. Dualism is the idea that the mind and the brain are two ontologically distinct things. Substance dualism is that they're ontologically distinct substances. In other words, they're two. It's not the case that like the brain has properties that are the mind, that if you collect them together, we could call that the mind, but they're actually two different substances. Today we'll talk about a specific type of substance dualism that is probably the more popular one today, and that is Cartesian dualism, which is named after its most famous proponent in modernity, René Descartes, although Plato was also a Cartesian dualist in this way. And the Cartesian dualist thinks that the mind is really, we could do this. Let's call the mind the soul here, because again, we're talking substance dualism. So the mind is some kind of like entity, right? Kind of a thing. And the Cartesian dualist is going to think that that soul is something that is totally separate from the body and separable from the body, and that what you are is the soul, and you're just using the body, right? The body is like a tool that you use. So this is where the phrase ghost in the machine comes from, right? It's like you're a ghost, that's you, the soul, using the machine, the body, the mechanical thing. Now, this would be as opposed to a dualism like hylomorphism, which would say that you are a body-soul composite. So what you are is actually the two of those things together. We'll cover hylomorphic dualism very soon. But as far as Cartesian dualism goes, there isn't a ton that we need to explore as far as what a Cartesian dualist believes. As far as arguments for Cartesian dualism, we've already given arguments for substance dualism, and Cartesian dualism will use those arguments for it, although those arguments will also work for hylomorphic dualism as well. I should be honest right up front and tell you that I'm a hylomorphic dualist, so like this video is going to look bad because I'm not going to go over any of the arguments for Cartesian dualism because, like I said, they work for Cartesian dualism and hylomorphic dualism. We've already gone over them. I'm just going to go over some objections that are unique to Cartesian dualism. If you believe that the soul is separate from the body and that you are the soul and the body is just something you're using, there are a few objections that you can give that are specific to that kind of view. And the first is this: it seems like if the soul is you and the body is just something you're using, that the body and / the brain shouldn't be able to affect you. You should be able to affect the body / brain, right? But it seems like from experiments that have been done and from just everyday experience that the brain affects the mind. So an obvious example is like just alcohol and doing drugs. They will warp your mind, and you'll see stuff that's not there, or you'll feel euphoria where you didn't feel it before. So those are obvious ones, but there are a lot more fun ones. Let's just talk about a few of them, okay? I get obsessed when I hear like some of the examples that people give that I don't know. I'm not like a neuroscientist, and I hear some of these like different things that could happen, and it's just mind blowing. And I hate to like get super obsessed about them because people actually have these things happen to them, but man, they're so interesting. So one of them is alien hand syndrome. If you have a corpus callosotomy, where your corpus callosum gets severed, usually they do it because you're having seizures, and they cut like the part of your brain that connects the two hemispheres. You can have this weird thing happen where one of your hands will operate on its own, and you won't be aware of anything that's happening. Right? So your brain is actually causing the hand to do stuff while your mind is totally unaware of it. So like there were experiments done where people were told like, stick your hand into this bag and pull out a golf ball, and the person was totally unaware of there being what there was in the bag, and then all of a sudden the hand pulls out a golf ball, and the person doesn't even know that they're holding a golf ball, right? Which is wild. So just give me a few of these, okay? Just follow me on a few of them. Another cool one is like a buddy of mine. This is not cool, but a buddy of mine, Dallas, had a brain tumor, and when he had the tumor, they cut the back of his skull open and used a laser. They shot it into his brain so that they could determine where was his speech center, because they didn't want to cut there, when they were trying to cut out the tumor. And he said that like all of a sudden he just couldn't talk. Like he was talking just fine, and then it just went away, and then all of a sudden it came back. And that's just wild, man. So it seems like, the brain is affecting the mind. The mind, all of a sudden you can't put together sentences, or you are unconscious of what's happening to your hands. Another one that I don't know how to pronounce is prosopagnosia, or face blindness. When you have a damage to the fusiform section of your brain, then you can lose the ability to identify people's faces. So people have this, and they can't even identify their own faces in the mirror, which is wild. I like this one. I don't want to say I like this one, but this one interests me because I kind of feel like I have, this is terrible. People are like, yeah, I think I have that. But I seriously have problems identifying people by their faces. Like I'll identify you because you have a certain haircut, and then if you get a different haircut, I'll walk right by you and be totally oblivious. Like I feel so bad because it happens to me so often. Like it's hard, man. Like anyway, so, or context is what I usually use. So if I know you from church, then I'm like, oh, there's Church Ed, he's over there, right? But if I see you out of church, I'm like, who the heck is that guy? Oh, it's Church Ed. What is he doing? It's not as bad as facial blindness people have it, for sure. Like they just can't recognize anybody. Now, those are examples of changes in the brain causing differences in the mind. But what you could do is you could reply, they don't actually cause changes in the mind. They cause changes in the tool that the mind is using. So the mind uses this tool, the brain, in order to communicate sentences out into the real world. Well, when that part of the brain is damaged, the mind can no longer use that tool correctly. So you could claim that it's really more of an equipment failure or something like that. A different kind of example, though, is a little more difficult. So there are some examples of the brain changing, causing characteristics to change. So, for example, the most famous example is this guy named Phineas Gage, who had a railroad spike go through his head. And people say that beforehand, he was a super nice guy, very gregarious, and all of a sudden, this thing goes through his brain, and it totally changes him. Now he's a really angry guy and very short-tempered and all those kinds of things. So the argument goes, change in the brain causes change in the persona, and the persona is seated in the mind. So if that's supposed to be where the soul is, it seems like the soul has been changed, but it doesn't seem like the brain could cause a change in a soul. So there doesn't seem like there could be a soul. A response that some people have to that is, well, of course it changed him, right? Like, wouldn't it change you? Like, it doesn't seem like the brain itself is what's causing the change. It's the circumstances, the pain that he's going through that's making him mad, right? So it would happen to you even if it didn't hit you in the brain. If it hit you somewhere else in your body, you would still be really angry all of a sudden. Like let's say if it paralyzed you, so you're quadriplegic, so it hit you like in the spine instead of the brain. That would still cause a total change in characteristics, or it could cause a change in characteristics. So maybe that's what really the actual change is, and it's not the brain changing the mind. I would say that is probably the biggest objection to Cartesian dualism that we haven't already gone over, and the ones that we've gone over for dualism in general, the ones that are specific to Cartesian dualism. But there are a few others. And one of them is this, let's say, if you're watching this, you might be watching on your phone, but you might also be watching in front of a computer. You have a keyboard in front of you. You have a mouse in front of you. You have tools, right, that are in front of you, and you're using those tools, but you don't consider them you, right? They're just stuff that you use. Is the body like that? Do you experience the body as some kind of tool that you use? It doesn't seem like that, right? It doesn't seem like I'm back there in the driver's seat just moving things around, but it's really just some kind of machine that's being moved. And what's even worse, another objection here, if my body is just a machine that my soul is using, then what happens if somebody decides to abuse this body, right? What happens if somebody decides to murder this body? Well, if you came and you destroyed my keyboard, you would get punished, but it wouldn't be that bad, right? It's not like I would send you to jail forever. It's just you would have to pay it off or something. But if you came and destroyed my body, now it doesn't seem like the same kind of thing, right? It seems like killing me is doing something to me. It's not doing something to this tool that I like to use. I personally think this is one of the reasons why I don't like Cartesian dualism, but I do think that they have an answer insofar as they could always say, well, it's because this one tool is unique, right? It is the seat of your engagement with the world. Without this one specific tool, then you can do nothing. So of course there's going to be, a feeling that this is a lot closer to who you are, and there's going to be a much bigger sense of loss when you lose this tool. So I could see that. I think that's a decent argument. A final objection that's unique to Cartesian dualists. Well, I'll say that hylomorphists have it, but not nearly as bad. It's the following, that the reason we're positing this thing of a soul is because there are experiences that we have, or because, we have sensations, we have thoughts, we have stuff like that. But so do animals. Dogs can see colors, and I think, or maybe they're colorblind. I don't know. They can at least see gray. Giraffes can taste leaves. Zebras can hear lions roaring. I don't know. Like, they can all experience things, is my point. Now, if the reason we're positing a soul is because we're explaining experience, then we'd have to posit souls for all these other animals as well. Now, you might think to yourself, that's not a big deal, right? Soul of spirit of the wolf? Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. Spirit of the eagle? But once we start to get to stuff like spirit of the dust mite, is that really going to be something that has a soul? That seems pretty weird, right? So although this isn't a knockdown objection, it sure seems weird to say that there are going to be the number of souls that there are going to be. There's going to be things with all kinds of things with souls. Now, for the Cartesian dualists, they could just bite the bullet and say, yep, there are just a whole lot of souls out there. Another thing they could say is they could say maybe it's the case that animals don't have experiences like humans have. Maybe since you can't actually get inside of the animal and see what the animal is experiencing, maybe the animals are just like robots. And when a dog yelps, it's because it's got some kind of program running that, if my owner steps on my paw, then make a yelp sound. But it's not like the dog's actually experiencing pain. Of course, that is animal abuse waiting to happen. But I think a bigger problem for it argument-wise, not like morally-wise, but a bigger problem for it is that you could make the same claim about other people. The reason that we say that somebody next to us is in pain is because we see the way that they react. We see their behavior. We can't actually get inside their mind. This is a problem called the problem of other minds, and we'll talk about it eventually. But you can't get inside somebody's mind and see their experiences. So you're from the outside, all you can see is their reactions to what happens. So you say, oh, that person looks like, is reacting the way I'm reacting. I know internally this is what the experience I'm having, I'm assuming that they're going to have the same experiences. So if we're going to shut down the argument for dogs having experiences like us, then by that same logic, we could shut down the reasoning that other humans have experiences like us. And that seems crazy, right? That seems like some path we don't want to go down. Maybe the Cartesian dualist can say that when we get down to certain things, that it is like a machine, like, because like bacteria will react to certain stimuli, but they don't have nervous systems, so they're not experiencing anything. So maybe dust mites don't have any kind of experience, so they don't have souls. I don't know. But then you'd still have like souls of mice. I don't know. Cartesian dualists, help me out here. Anyway, that's really all I have for Cartesian dualism. If you have questions on that, or you have anything you want to say, please hit me up in the comments. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share this video. That'll be very helpful for me and for this channel. And I will see you in the next video. Adios.